skateboarding?
Yeah.
This is a useful tool. This is a useful tool that can be used here to collect fossils. You scrape this along the sediment and then you can wash it and the sand filters out and then you can see if there's any shark teeth inside of there. Just watch out because this clay, that clay can be super slippery, so step in the sand instead of on the clay. Just jump over to here onto the sand. But it'll make it more memorable.
Getting some, rolling them up. How you feeling about going barefoot?
Is this like a shoes off situation?
Yeah, I'm going shoes off.
You could if you want to.
Ain't nothing gonna eat me?
Nope.
So that is Cove Point down there. And between us and that point, but closer to that point, is the nuclear power plant, Calvert Cliffs nuclear power plant. And just around that corner is the liquefied natural gas plant. So there's natural gas that they frack in Pennsylvania, right? And they pipe it all the way down here. And then out in the water, there's a giant platform that super tankers can come up to. And they will then upload the natural gas that then they sell overseas to India and Japan.
That's cool.
But there's a nuclear power plant between us and them. And so south of here, this is the community of Scientist Cliffs. And then this is Warriors Rest. So this is a very productive section of the cliffs. So yeah, we don't need to get like super wet. We can walk in the shallower water. It's more interesting to go that way than that way because the cliff expanse is more impressive.
So what would this be considered? Just anything?
Right, so this is a Miocene barnacle.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
We found a Miocene fossil.
Yeah, and that there is a scallop. So you have several. That's another barnacle.
All right.
Yeah.
Explain to me, how do I get back to
Chat. You can call message.
Wow.
Okay.
Mr. Osborne in the water.
That is not cold at all. Okay, if you look up, you'll notice that there's this giant overhang. It would not be a good idea to stand here for any length of time in case that comes down. So when we're out along the cliffs, we always have to be mindful of what's above us. So it would be better to stand like down here, right, where the cliff is very stable and there's no overhanging sediment. So I'm just going to mention that for other people here.
All right, we have the students.
We have students. Welcome to the Chesapeake Bay. We're ready to broadcast, or should we go down a little further?
Yeah, we can go down further.
All right, we'll go down a little
down
further.
this point
Just
here.
follow us along.
As much as possible, walk on the sand. Try not to step on the clay because the clay has shells in it and it's very slippery. So if you slip on the clay layer without shoes on, the shell you might accidentally get cut by a shell. So walk on the sand, it's much more stable. So these waves are just temporary, they're from the boat. So
Jumping along the clay. Oh my.
I shuffled!
This is slippery. This is
I shuffled! You better... Wave took me, I went to shuffle.
you can just keep going, and when you get over there, just go up onto the sandy beach.
All right.
Hello guys. I'm walking to the sand. So yeah. Well, this joint is beautiful. It's so beautiful.
God, just dug into the sand, dug right down in the sand by 2 feet, 2 hands.
Oh, he's on a shirt too.
No way. It was just laying here. It was laying right in this groove here.
That's cool.
So I can hold the camera if you want to dig around some. And I was just scooping with my hands, just scooping. I'm going to get some video over here too.
Appalachian Mountains go further to the west. And the rivers that are flowing from those mountains today were flowing back in the Miocene, and they were carrying those sediments and laying them down in the ocean that was here. The water obviously was deeper than it is right now, and so these sediments were on the ocean floor, and the animals that were living in that marine environment at that time, some of them were preserved as fossils. And so if you look at the base of the cliff down here, you can see all these little white flecks. Those are the fossilized remains of seashells, right, that were living in this place and at that time, living their lives and then dying. Then the water got deeper, and so the conditions weren't great for shelled animals to be living here. So that's why we have this thick expanse of sediment that was mostly devoid of fossils. You can see there's a few shells scattered. And then when you look just above it here, you can see all of a sudden you get this relatively thick layer. It's about 2 feet thick. It's just completely chock full of seashells. So that represents a time when the water was shallower, we were closer to shore, and there was a lot of oxygen in the water, so it was the conditions were ideal in this warmer Miocene Atlantic Ocean for those shells to be living here at that time. And then, of course, the water got deeper again, and there's more clay. There's a sandy layer up there, which represents a shallow water deposit. And then you can see that there are even more layers up above all of that. So all of these sediments were being laid down in an ocean environment. Now, as these cliffs erode naturally because of the waves pounding against them, fossils become exposed, as you can see here. And we are interested in all the different kinds of fossils that occur here. there are over 600 different kinds of animals that have been found as fossils along Calvert Cliffs. So this is a world-famous location for both geologists and paleontologists. Now, as I mentioned, as the cliffs erode, fossils tumble out onto the beach. And here, for example, is a fossil that Mr. Michael just handed to me, one that he just picked up. This is a Miocene barnacle, another barnacle here, part of a seashell. And this is in a little chunk of hardened sediment. And you just picked up.
Yeah, couldn't believe it.
Okay,
Just dug down into the sand.
So he was just sifting through the sand and he found this fossil shark tooth. So that is a Miocene aged shark tooth. And from its size and shape, we know that it is of the kind of shark that is the ancestor to the living great white shark. Smooth cutting edge. Through time, that kind of shark developed serrations as it evolved into the living great white shark. So that's why people love to walk these beaches and look for shark teeth, especially that erode out of these cliffs. We even find like pelagic birds, oceanic bird skeletons here. Very, very rare. As you know, bird bone is very, very delicate. But we find sharks, skates, and rays. A diversity of fish, over 50 different kinds of species of fish have been found here. Turtles, crocodiles, dolphins, whales, land mammals. Is there a question?
Yeah, there's a question. How big was the shark?
Oh, very good. So that
Good
kind
question.
of shark was basically identical in size to the living great white shark. So they would have attained a maximum length of about 20 feet long.
Great.
Cool. So let's hear some questions from the classroom. Right now, Miss McFarland can see the chat window. And if you have any directions for us, because here we are, you can see around us. You can see there's some clay, there's some sand, there's some rocks out here. You can direct us to where you think we should look for some fossils. I see that Mr. Godfrey's telling us to come over and see something. He's got something on it over here.
Actually, I'll move down just a little bit more because it's even more obvious here. So as I mentioned, these sediments were being laid down on the bottom of the prehistoric Atlantic Ocean, right? And so as the sediments were being laid down, the sediments on the top were actually compressing the lower layers of sediment and squishing the water out. And at some point, an organism, an animal like a worm or some sort of crab or crustacean, shrimp-like creature could tunnel into those compressed sediments, and the sediments wouldn't just collapse on itself. And so you can see here, if you look closely at the sediment here, that there's different colors of sediment. All of these light-colored mottled sediments here represent tunnels that were made by organisms living on the ocean floor. So this is a very active ocean floor during the Miocene. And as you move up, you can see all of these tunnels that were being burrowed into the sediment. Look at all the different tunnels there that were being made by worms and shrimp and other organisms living in the ocean floor of this Miocene sea.
All right, you got some questions. How big was the worm?
So they would be like modern worms that live in the ocean floor today. They're marine worms that actively tunnel through, and they're either detrital feeders, and they're feeding on just the sediment that's going through them, or they're actually preying upon animals and consuming them. So you can see that the diameter of that burrow is about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. And so that gives you the maximum size, right, of the animal that was tunneling through the sediments.
All right, the other question is, can you try to find a stone shell? So Dr. Ashton went back to get his bucket to do that. How deep was the water back then?
Very good. So the water went up and down over the millions of years of sediments. The water depth did not stay the same. And that's because global temperatures fluctuated, right? During the Miocene, there was no ice at the North Pole like there is today, and there was less ice at the South Pole. So when you melt those polar ice caps, you raise the level of the water in the ocean, and so it flooded over what's called the Atlantic coastal plain as far west as Washington, D.C.
All right, your next question.
But just quickly, so the temperature would go up and down, right? And so when the temperature was high, the water level would be high. And when the temperature went down a little bit, more ice would be put at the South Pole, and so the water would be pulled out of the ocean to put on that polar ice cap, okay? And so the different kinds of sediments shallower water for the shelly, sandy layers.
The consistency of the wall.
So this is clay, very clay, but there is sand content. So you can see me digging into it. That's like fine-grained clay, kind of like smeared on my finger. You can see that's clay. So you could take this clay and mix it with another kind of clay and actually use it for pottery or making a glaze for pottery. That would be a lot of fun. Up a little bit higher where the shelly material is, where all the moss is growing. That's because there's a lot of water coming out of the cliff there. That's that sandy layer where all the shells are. If you pan a little bit further that way, they should be able to see the white speckly shell material. That's a very sandy layer, and it has a lot of shells in it. So that's a near shore, shallow water environment. If I could jump up that high, and even above it, actually, you can see that it's almost pure sand, like beach sand up above that. So very different depths of the ocean during the Miocene. So today we don't think about global climate changing that much. We're actually entering a global warming period, right? And so people are concerned about that. But during the Miocene, they weren't concerned about global warming. There weren't people then to worry themselves about that. Temperatures were between 5 and 7 degrees Celsius warmer than they are today. So there was no ice at the North Pole.
A couple other questions. They're coming in. What other creatures have you seen in the water?
So in the bay today, right, there's a diversity of organisms that live locally, and they're heavily fished. So there's thousands or hundreds of thousands of pounds of seafood that's taken out of the Chesapeake Bay from the fish, like vertebra, like you have vertebrae in your backbone. So this is a backbone piece. And you'll notice how it's textured and sculptured. That's because there was a plate that occurred on this bone, like a capping bone. So that means that since that bone did not fuse to this was a juvenile, this was a subadult, and so it died before it reached maturity. And you can see there's some broken bone there, but there's also sediment, right? I just popped a piece of sediment off. That's the finished edge of the bone right there. So this is a vertebra. That's where the spinal cord would have gone down the length of the vertebra, right? Starting out of the skull, you have the neural canal, the neural nerve cord that goes down the backbone. And here you can see that the bone has been eroded. So you're looking at the inside spongy texture of this bone. So there are two changes, conspicuous changes between a modern dolphin bone and this dolphin vertebra. One, the color. The brown color comes from the minerals that were surrounding the bone after it became buried in the ocean floor, right? And this color is mostly iron oxide, which is like rust, right? When you see rusty metal, it's kind of this sort of reddish brown color. Same mineral that is being absorbed by this vertebra. Also, because of that, the rock-forming minerals are being added to this vertebra, so it's heavier than a modern vertebra would be. And that's how we can tell often if it's a modern or if it's a fossil bone, just because of the color and also the density and the weight of it. So this is definitely a fossil dolphin bone. Now what's interesting is that what you're looking at is the actual bone that the animal made. You could take this to a hospital and they could, if they CT scanned it, right, X-rayed it, you would see the exact internal structure that was made by the dolphin when it created this bone. Oh, this is Mike Gilwood. Oh, okay, so here.
On the puppy. I can show.
That's
show
Reba.
the students. This, yeah, when I was walking back to get the bucket, it was just kind of in an area like this, and it was sort of coming out of this clay. That's how I found that piece.
How big was the dolphin? Can you tell?
Yeah, the dolphin would have been about 12 feet long. 1/3 of that would probably have been the length of its skull. So these dolphins had super long skulls, like the back, like 4 feet long is the length of the skull. Crabs or whatever kind of food that then they would have eaten.
Okay. Rough estimate of how old that dolphin bone could have been.
So the average age here is typically like that lower bed is about 12 million years old.
12 million years old.
Yeah, it gets younger as you go up, right? And it gets older as you go down. So here we have Mike Gilwood, volunteer, Stephen Groff, a member of our department, and then is Emily with you? Oh yeah, so Emily Bistick is the young lady who found the fossil dolphin that you can find online, and that is Mike's dog, Reba, the little redhead. who he answers to. She who must be obeyed. So the water was too high to excavate, or what happened?
No, it was too high when we got here, so we're coming back to do it.
Oh, you're working on it now.
So there's not much left of it, but
Okay.
at least a little brain piece.
Okay, so the three that I just introduced you to, two of them are volunteers. One is a member of our department. Emily is one of these naturally gifted fossil finders. And she's got beautiful barnacles. Can I show them? Because there's students online here.
Oh, yeah.
So these are Miocene barnacles, and these are just lovely specimens. You're a little bit jumpy there. What, did something like bite you? So these barnacles are millions of years old. They're about 10 to 12 million years old. They would have come from one of the layers above us. And they're just absolutely gorgeous fossils that Henry found in
You started over? You started it over?
So I think they're going to try to excavate the remains of a fossil.
I just made a new video. New video?
You want to get this fish here? This little guy?
Is it alive?
Yeah.
Show him.
Yeah. Nice. I forget what they're called. Somebody told me they stick onto the rock with their mouth.
I've never seen that. I don't know what that is. It's like a fish worm. Let's go show him. Found a fish.
So Michael, you will notice that there's some blocks down there that have a lot of shell material in it.
That'd be great.
I don't know. I don't have any. I could probably borrow. We might have a tool that I can use.
Do we have a shovel with us?
Oh, you
if that
do?
helps?
Okay. Yeah. We can slam that.
Let's head over to that.
A little fish. We got a little fish. Do we want to keep it alive here? Oh, it just disappeared. Sorry.
Oh no.
So
Your fish got away.
as
Thanks
far
to me.
as choice
That was a
fossil
lovely
areas,
fish.
down here we're going to look at some pieces of the cliff that fell off. And Mr. Godfrey told us that if we take some of these shovelfuls of this really densely packed clay, we're certain to find some old shells and some fossils in the classroom tomorrow. Whatever you would recommend.
We have some bags to separate up these chunks. Yeah, I'm just gonna see what has the best size. This one here will be better.
All right.
It's not as full.
Jeffrey, move out the way for a second.
Come down on top here.
Come on over, Jeffrey.
Never mind. I was trying to get a shot.
So if I might make a recommendation, take your shovel and just come down on it parallel to this clip, to this face. You want to chop it along here to knock off some of those pieces that have a lot of shell material in it, okay? Just watch your foot that you don't cut into your foot. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'll just show you. I'm going to go back a little bit. If you want to just step back a little bit, I'm just going to take a larger, try to get a larger chunk. You don't want to, it doesn't matter. You can have broken up pieces like that, but I'm trying to get a piece that's a little bit larger. That's more like a chunk.
Oh, yeah.
So you want pieces like that, then you have a chance of getting a complete shell out. Like this one here. So that's a glossus shell, the so-called tongue shell, just because of the shape. And you can see how densely packed the shell material is in here. So Jeffrey, I'm going to let you chop away at it like that.
Fill some bags, Jeffrey.
Oh, Yeah, I can show you the technique for if they come here and want to look for shark teeth. This is the technique that I find to be the best. If you don't have a sieve or a screen, you can do this. So you look for where there's coarse sand or like gravelly-like material, and usually there's a little drop down right here. So this is the best place to stand. And then what you do is you have your back to the bay, and you just scoop this up and you toss it up where the waves are washing. And as the waves wash it, you watch closely, for little tiny shark teeth, and you have to pounce on them because the next wave will like move it. And so I have no idea if we will actually find any shark teeth, but this is what you do. You just kind of throw it up onto the beach, and you watch it as the waves wash it, and you look for shark teeth. And they're going to be like little tiny, little tiny pieces, little tiny black, very dark colored pieces of shark teeth or stingray mouth plates. That's a little piece of bone. Here's a little tiny shark tooth right there in the palm of my hand. You can see. So that's from a gray shark, like a bull shark or dusky shark. That's the most common. And there's a super tiny one there. Yeah, look at that. That's crazy how tiny that tooth is. Yeah. So another gray shark tooth. So we can put these in a bag. But that's what you do. You just sort of like, this is the best place to look.
I think that's a tiny. Is that a tiny one? Can't tell if it's a piece of shell.
Doesn't look very sharp.
That's definitely should be.
Yeah, and there was another little one that was on the end.
Oh yeah.
That's right there too, yeah.
Are shark teeth and dolphin teeth the same size?
They can be, yes.
Yes.
So when you find a dolphin tooth, that means that dolphin died, because dolphins during the Miocene, like today, only get one set of teeth for their whole life, whereas sharks can produce thousands of teeth throughout their life. That's why shark teeth here are the most abundant remains of animals with backbone. Okay, whereas shells, there's trillions and trillions of shells. So shark teeth are then the next highest one when it comes to like vertebrates. So you just kind of scoop this up like this, and you let the waves wash it, and you pounce on anything that looks roughly teeth-like. And if the water's a little bit chilly, it helps to wear like chest waders.
Yeah, that's for sure. Or just jump in like Miss Fish did.
Jump in like I did.
Just get used to the water right away.
Yeah, all or nothing.
It couldn't have happened to a nicer person.
That's
Right?
Someone who loves the beach.
Yes, I know.
It's her passion.
Yeah, it is now.
She loves it.
Is the water cold? I would say it's
Oh, it feels nice.
room
Huh?
temperature.
It's beautiful.
It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
cool water.
Yeah,
If you go to a beach or a little bit there, that's not cold. It's not cold.
yeah, jump right in, guys. Jump right in. Jump right in,
How are we
guys.
doing on time, Miss McFarland?
Oh, here's a stingray, part of a stingray tooth.
Ooh.
It's
So we find
12:42.
stingray teeth, fossil stingray tooth. So stingrays, this kind of stingray, had multiple teeth that were sort of flat on the top, and so they formed kind of like a flat battery of teeth, both upper and lower jaws, and so they would suck like a clam into their mouth.
I know.
That's so
that was
cool.
And then
crazy.
they have strong
Crazy.
muscles that would then just crush
Dumb
the
luck.
clam shell. They would suck out the soft tissues and then spit out the clam shell material
Couldn't
that they don't
believe it.
want. And just like regular sharks, they shed their teeth as well. And so this would have been a shed tooth. The little tiny lines that you see on there,
Yeah, he knows what he's looking for.
the little
So
tiny
stuff will
lines,
jump out
that's
to
the
him.
root of the tooth. Well,
Who
that
knows how
flat
many-
surface
You can
right
spot
here,
things, but he
that's
just-
the crushing surface.
he knows
of the
exactly what
stingray
it is.
tooth. So I'm going to give that to you. I'll put it in your pocket or whatever.
There you go. Thank you. I would love
Nice rock.
This is what we call a leverite. Leave her right where you found it. It's nothing.
Very nice.
It's it's a geology joke. I got lots of them.
You geologist.
Leave it right where you
Leave her right, yeah.
Nice.
smoked them.
I can hear some kids groaning back in the building. I
So
hear
you
them
can
groaning.
see that the stingray tooth plates are actually more common than the actual pointy type shark tooth. So it's another little bit of a stingray tooth plate.
Oh, what you got?
Oh, wild.
That looks so wild.
A slab.
That's not a bone.
That's where you dropped that,
That's not
buddy.
a bow.
That was, what was it called again?
That's a leave it right.
Leave her right. Right?
Leave it right.
Leave it right where you left it.
I'm finding lots of leverites, mostly leverites. Oh wait, no. This kind of looks
On
interesting.
average, how many teeth does a stingray or shark have?
27.
Hold it.
So in a lifetime, they can
Hold the shovel.
actually shed
You can use the shovel.
But
Use the
in their
shovel.
mouth at any one time, it depends on the shark. For example, megalodon will have just over 300 teeth.
No, go after him.
Now, most of
Oh, yeah.
those teeth were hidden by
Especially
the
that one definitely looks petrified. I'm not sure about this one, whether it's more recent or not. I found this thing. It's a funny shape. I'm not sure if that's something. Maybe ask him. Maybe take that over and ask if that's anything.
It's not rigid, it's actually flexible. And as it conveyor belts its way up to becoming the functional tooth, it's mineralized. Minerals are added to it from the outside in. And then when it is fully formed, it can then break through the gum of the shark, right, and become the functional tooth. And then after a while, that tooth will be shed as a new tooth comes in to replace it. A new, slightly larger tooth, and of course, very sharp.
Like a baby.
So sharks have a wonderful adaptation to replacing their teeth throughout their life. I wish we had the same kind of adaptation. We get 2 sets of teeth, as you know. Dolphins only get 1 set of teeth, so they have to be very careful about what they feed on so that they don't break or lose their teeth. So you have found, so from time to time, the sediments along the cliffs do cement, do harden. Probably what happens is some of the shells, fossil shells, they dissolve and they're redeposited in the sediment. So you can see this is a sandstone. It's very coarse, rough sand. And it can then surround fossils. So Jeffrey has found just a few little pieces of fossil, Miocene fossil shells in here, and from barnacles. And also there's some shell material in here that has naturally cemented around these very ancient fossils.
All right, so I think I've skipped
that's
some
lovely.
questions that they've had.
Oh, this
for
is
me.
lovely too.
Oh.
So this you can see is a broken part of what was a very thick and heavy shell. It's a Miocene shell, and it's called is it a Chesicardium? No, it's a Venus clam. So this is Mercenaria. This is a venerid clam, a Venus clam. And you'll notice that this is the outside of the clam, and you can see the lines here as it grew, right? The soft tissue of the shell made the shell, and it ornamented the outside of the shell as well. And then you're looking at part of the inside of the shell. And over here, that little indentation right there where my finger is a muscle scar. So clams, right, have 2 big muscles that help them close the 2 halves of their shell and keep it shut. And then this is part of the hinge line where the shell can open and close. But you can see how thick that shell was, and that helped to protect it because there were snails, like moon snails, that actually attach themselves with their muscular foot that they move along the sand on, kind of like Gary in SpongeBob, right? He moves along on his foot, and they could grab hold of this, and they use their radula, which is their teeth, and they have saliva, which is acidic, to actually burrow through the shell. And once they breach the shell to the inside, then they can suck out the contents. And having a very thick shell like that helps to protect this animal from predators like that. So that's a nice find. Oh, this is beautiful. So this is a lovely little example of a scallop shell, a Miocene scallop shell. It's just a baby, right? And again, it's a bivalve, so there's another half of this. It's unusual to find both valves together. So that little straight line right there is the hinge line, right, where the 2 halves of the clam would close on itself. And the muscle, you don't see a muscle scar on this little baby, but the little muscle scar would be a little tiny round thing right in the middle of the shell here. And if you've ever eaten scallops, like in a restaurant or something, like in a seafood restaurant, that's the muscle, right, that closes the scallop shell. So this guy, again, will grow by adding and getting larger and larger. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a fine sort of textured ornamentation on the outside of that shell. That's a beautiful specimen right there. So hang on to that one. That's a nice one to find.
What's the oldest one you've ever seen?
So here the oldest ones are about 22 million years old. But in different places where I live, I've seen fossils that are over 500 million years old. Years ago, I had the pleasure of going to a World Heritage Site in British Columbia, Canada. So very, very ancient animals. The dawn of multicellular metazoans. Animals that are
Those like always look weird.
and the single-celled organisms from which they evolved.
That's kind of cool. I've never seen that before.
I'm going to take this film. It's not very far. I'm just seeing what they're excavating.
Okay.
Because I think the students would enjoy seeing
What's the
that.
tiger beetle look like? Is this a tiger beetle? Is that one?
Where's that?
Is this a tiger beetle?
No. The tiger beetles are about half that size. But this one's wet, and so it needs to dry off, or it's gonna.
Can it bite you?
This is some kind of ground beetle. Caribid is the family. But we can put it on the side of the cliff over here, and it will dry out. Then it gets flowers. Because its wings are too wet. Maybe here is better. Yeah, I just recommend that we go down and have a look at what
Someone doesn't mind carrying the shovel, I'll carry this bucket because it's getting a little heavy.
You almost slipped.
Oh, you found it.
So what'd you find?
Right next to the skull.
It's not uncommon for right underneath that. So it's not uncommon for us to find a halo of shark teeth surrounding whale and dolphin skulls. And so this is a tiny megalodon tooth. It's looks like it's an upper or anterior, but it could be a bit lower because it's a triangular. Yeah, go lower. And you'll notice that there's the cutting edge, right? I don't know if you can see the serrations on there. So these sharks were superbly well adapted at cutting apart their prey because they're referred to as macro predators, which means that they're eating animals that are too large to swallow whole. And so just like living great white sharks, they have to cut their animals into smaller pieces. They can't swallow a whole whale. Now this is a tiny tooth, right? The largest ones could get up to just over 7 inches long. We typically don't find anything over 6 inches in this area. So because of its size, it would have come from a relatively young megalodon, which may well have been the megalodon that killed or scavenged that dolphin. We don't know for sure.
Oh wow.
It's lovely, yeah.
Start jacketing.
Yeah, so we're going to start putting the jacket on it. It's called the field jacket, so that we can move it from here back to the lab.
A halo of teeth. Battery's out? All right. I was wondering how long this would last.
It was just on 65, not too long.
No, it's not out.
No?
Are you good or you want me to get it?
Touch that screen. Oh yeah, we're still going. Oh yeah, we're still alive.
So watch what he's doing. See, he has this, it's like a cheesecloth that is saturated with plaster of Paris. It's what doctors used to use to make a cast around a broken bone. Now typically they use fiberglass to get it wet. That would get kind of squishy if you got it wet again. And so he soaks it for 10 seconds, and then he's just going back and forth, wrapping it up. That will take about 10-15 minutes to harden, and it provides a nice, what we call the field jacket, a cast around it so that we can continue to dig underneath it and then flip it over and carry it back to the museum, where we will take dental scalers and brushes and gently scrape the sediment off from around the bone. And so now he's rubbing it together so that the different layers, right, weld or seal join together. And that's where the strength comes from, by laminating multiple layers of those gypsona bandages.
Miss McFarland, we're right at 12:56. We've seen a real highlight here. Thanks so much to special guests. Appreciate it. And Mr. Godfrey, this has been extraordinary. Really, you are an encyclopedia of knowledge, and this has been a great day.
One last question. How deep is the Chesapeake Bay?
It can get very deep at places.
So the saying is that if you're boating in the Chesapeake Bay and your boat tips over, you just stand up. That's how shallow it is in general. That's an exaggeration, obviously. Now, out a ways closer to the eastern shore, there's a deep channel which was carved by the prehistoric Susquehanna River. And at the end of the Ice Age, when the continental ice sheets were melting and that water was going back into the oceans, right? The level of the water in the oceans was flooding, and so it was rising, and so it moved up and flooded over the top of the channel of the Susquehanna River over there. At that time, the cliffs then started to erode. And so what you're seeing here is basically a really, really wide Susquehanna River. But the ancient channel is out there still, right? The deeper channel, and it's very shallow, relatively speaking, to that deeper channel. And the big ships that come up the bay to the LNG plant or go all the way up to Baltimore to offload their cargo, they follow that channel because it's deeper and it's easier for the captains to navigate.
Any other questions?
I'll get that back to you.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Thank you all for attending. We'll be back. We've got a bucket full of stuff to look through. Maybe we'll even find some more gems.
So,
But our appreciation to the government
there's the
agencies.
cluster shells.
We'll get some shells. Absolutely. Thank you.
It's off. I canned it.
Yeah, that's great. Different technique here. This is
She don't want to be there no more.
the mud and separate technique, showing some techniques for fossil separation. So some technique here, some really good technique. Wetting and scraping.
Doing foul stuff. That's you. You know that don't want cameras on them, don't like cameras on them.
Right now, Ms. McFarland can see the chat window. And if you have